4 days ago or so, Saquon Barkley, after many, and I mean many, discussions, he went on a podcast and they had a whole elite running back. Hey, Dobbins was invited to for whatever reason, you know. But after all that, I'm sure you've heard about that. You don't need me to regurgitate it to you. Saquon Barkley, as you know, signed a 1-year, $11 million deal that included a $2 million signing bonus, so he makes just a little bit more than the old franchise tag. And now we'll see what happens with Josh Jacobs. We'll see what happens with a lot of other guys that need contracts. But Joel, you are indeed a fan of the New York Football Giants, and I'm sure this has to feel good, but also feels a little strange because, yes, you signed a deal, but it is a 1-year deal, not 2, not 5, not 4. It's 1 year, $11 million. Anything can still happen with Saquon Barkley.
I like to point out real quick. Keep in mind, they were intentionally trying to franchise tag him. They obviously agree on a 1-year deal. He can get franchise tagged next year.
Yes.
He could get franchise. So I'm like, you know what, man? Okay, here's my thing. Here's my whole opinion about the New York Giants and Saquon Barkley right now. Okay. I understand the argument of, oh, I mean, come on. He was your entire offense last year. What do you mean? Like, you need to pay him. He's obviously one of the best running backs in this league. My argument to that is, listen, this guy is 26, 27 years old. He's 26. He's going to be 27 by the start of the season. I believe so, if not next year. If you were to sign him to a 4-year deal, you're signing him all the way up to he's 30, 31, right? And I'm like, me personally, I don't want to be paying $14 million for a 30-year-old plus running back. I really don't want to be doing that.
Yep.
And not to mention, Joe Shane realizes here, did the Seahawks struggle at all to get Canine? Did Austin Eckler was undrafted. I mean, Dameon Pierce, he went in like what, the third round? I mean, come on, like, it's not that hard to find running backs in this league, man. It's not that hard. You look at like majority of like the starting running backs in this league, guys who were like amazing, guys who are like top tier. Not many of them were like top picks. Not many of them were first round picks. Not many of them were second round picks. Like I'm telling you, he's realizing this and saying, you know what? I will keep Saquon here. I made him an offer back in, I want to say it was like October or November. They made an offer. He declined it. Now all of a sudden he wants that offer back, and they're saying, "Well, no, we're not going to do that." And I'm looking at this and just saying, Saquon's doing it to himself. Saquon's doing it to himself, and not to mention, he doesn't have a lot of leverage. He doesn't have a lot of leverage,
Not
in my
much.
opinion.
I mean, you look at Isaiah Pacheco with the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, they just won a Super Bowl. You have that aspect to it. I mean, I'm totally with that. I have always been, someone who is not big on signing running backs to long-term deals. I know we found a clip from like 3 years ago where we talked about this
Yeah,
too
we
already.
talked about this. We talked about this
And I mean,
exact
this has been a
topic.
discussion, right? This has been a discussion for so long. For so long, we've been talking about should you pay the running back, and I think there are a couple deals that really ruined the running back market forever. I mean, it just will never be the same after Todd Gurley, after Ezekiel Elliott, and after Le'Veon Bell. Those are kind of the three names that you really think of, guys that were at the top of their game for a while, looked like, oh my goodness, this guy's going to be the best running back in football, for the next 5 years, 6 years. This deal is a no-brainer. Todd Gurley, that not Todd Gurley's situation was not his fault. He had to deal with injury issues and all of that and arthritis, and then it was just an unfortunate situation. Le'Veon Bell, he wasn't exactly all that into it. He says he regrets signing with the Jets. He says he should have stayed with Pittsburgh and all that. And Ezekiel Elliott is visiting with the Patriots right now, so we'll see what happens with him. However, my thing about Saquon Barkley, and I know that, insanity, the definition of it is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And the thing was, I was totally against those deals back then. I never wanted those teams to sign their running backs to long-term deals. But my only thing here is, there is that argument, though, that the Giants, their offense is this guy by the name of Saquon Barkley. And you're paying Daniel Jones, what, $35-40 million a year. Now, I think the Giants have kind of, they've signed enough players to where they don't have that free room to sign Barkley, like it wouldn't really matter. But
Mhm.
The thing about Saquon Barkley, and you look at a guy like Christian McCaffrey, right? He got his deal. He had no
Yeah.
problem getting his deal because he is the best running back in football, arguably. What is now? You talk about K9, you talk about Dameon Pierce. How big in your mind is the gap between a guy like Kenneth Walker and the gap between Saquon Barkley? It's pretty large, I'd imagine.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I would make the argument that I don't think very soon it's gonna be that long.
How soon is the question, right? Because if you sign Saquon to a 4-year deal, you kind of get him on the back end of it, and you
Because
get 2 really good years.
keep in mind, K9 didn't play the first half of the season.
He did not. He was hurt. Yes.
He did not play, and like not only that, Rashad Penny was like he was like the RB1 for them, but
Right.
once he got on the scene, he blew up. It was like he's been playing he's been playing in the NFL for like 10 years, like the
Right.
way you saw him playing, and it's like, listen, I just don't find it hard to find a guy like him again next year. I don't think I don't think it would be that difficult. And people saying, yeah, Saquon was the face of the offense. Saquon was like 30% of the offense last year. You know what I say to that? Find a new face of the offense. Find a new offensive scheme. Pass more with Daniel Jones. The guy had 15 passing touchdowns last year. You think he
Oh,
can't do a little more than that? Come on, man.
you want to
Like
pass more with Daniel Jones? That's a pretty big risk.
he only had like 5 interceptions last year.
Because of his passing total amount of pass attempts was not as high.
And we
They weren't
rushed more
throwing a
with
lot of
Daniel
deep balls.
Jones.
Daniel Jones he had the same. It was this take coming out of college. Everybody was saying this about him. Daniel Jones is one of those guys. He won't lose you a game, but he cannot win you a game. Well, he can lose you the game, but he can't win you the game. Is actually what it was said
So
because
he's
he's
Kirk Cousins.
that guy that he's. I guess he's Kirk Cousins with a little bit of. He's
More
clumsy Kirk Cousins.
mobility.
He's clumsy Kirk Cousins actually.
He has a little more mobility.
Kirk Cousins is 10 times the passer that Daniel Jones is.
I
This guy
I will admit he is a better passer than Daniel Jones. I will admit
by
that.
like a wide margin, by a
I don't know
pretty
if it's.
good margin. Daniel Jones has a little bit of a deep ball, but they don't use that deep ball. They don't try to. Well, they had no receivers, obviously, but it's not like that.
I think if you put Justin Jefferson on the Giants, Daniel Jones would make a Pro Bowl.
You can make Kevin Cobb look good with Justin Jefferson. That's the problem.
That's what I mean.
But are you going to win a Super Bowl is the question. Are you going to win a Super Bowl with a top tier running back like Saquon Barkley? I don't know. I don't see it. It doesn't really happen. You don't really win Super Bowls with running backs like Saquon Barkley. You just don't. You
Doesn't
don't win
happen.
Super Bowls with guys like Justin Jefferson. I'd argue as well with superstar receivers that are going to get big contracts. So it's this never ending issue with skill position players where what is that gap between in terms of winning and in terms of talent. What's the trade-off when you have Matt Breida versus Saquon Barkley? How many more games do the Giants win if Matt Breida is the one starting all those games rather than
Or
Saquon
Eric
Barkley?
Gray.
Eric Gray, Oklahoma legend. He's
Eric
kind of slow,
Gray.
but he's a great power back. The Giants are going to like him a lot in the red zone, I think. um but for these Giants, right? So at the end of the day, we can talk about this all we want. Next season,
No,
Saquon Barkley is a New York Giant, right?
exactly.
That's all that matters. Where do you see these Giants going? Is the question with Saquon Barkley.
Well, here's another thing when it comes to just like the New York Giants. I have seen, we always look at the record predictions and stuff like that. We always
Yeah,
look
yeah,
at,
yeah.
how draft grades, how do these guys do, all
Right.
this stuff. In my opinion, I feel like the Giants have done nothing but just get better this offseason. They've done nothing but get better. However, I still see people saying the Giants at best they'll win like 7 games, and I'm like, I don't get how they didn't lose any coaches, they didn't lose any of their key players, all their young stars. They re-signed them to mega deals, and it's like, oh my, they
So I
got
think the narrative is
or
that the Giants overachieved last year. And I think a lot of people think they're going to come crashing back down to earth this year. And the Eagles got better, the Cowboys got better, and the Commanders got better.
that I understand. That I understand. I do think the Cowboys, sticking with Tony Pollard, having
Yeah.
him be the guy, that's a smart move. Eagles getting Jalen Carter. I don't know. I still don't know how that happened, but
He's the best player of the draft. Okay. My
and then
goodness.
No one's concerned about Washington. I'm not even gonna mention Washington, but
They've got a good defense, though. I mean, they're one of those teams that you don't want to just go over lightly
when
in the
healthy,
NFC East.
I mean, how many games is Chase Young gonna play this year? I mean, I haven't
We'll
seen this
find
man
out.
play. I feel like I haven't seen this man play since like college.
Yeah, we'll find
I
out. We
swear
will
I
find
haven't.
out.
But like I said, I'm looking at the Giants, and I think they can make a wild card spot. I think they can
Yeah,
make a wild card spot. I think they can, and it's so funny too, because like it's easy saying this now, but looking at where they were at last year, I was saying to myself, like once in the last like week or two, like it's like, oh, if this team beats this team, then this team will become this seed, like oh,
all
all
that
that stuff,
crap.
like at
Yeah,
the last week. I literally looked at the Giants and I was like, okay, if I'm being honest, I want Minnesota. Minnesota is the only team right now where I'm like, you know what? I think they could beat them. I think they could beat Minnesota. I'm like, that's the only team I'm like, and of course, at least for me as a Giants fan, that was probably game of the year.
yeah.
That was probably game of the year for the New York Giants, and I'm like, oh my god, like that was arguably one of the best games I've seen from the New York Giants in the past 5 years.
Because they showed that. I mean, well, they had made the playoffs in however long, and that last playoff game was against the Packers, where the boat
Yeah,
incident happened. If we want to, is it called the boat incident? Do we call it that now? Where
it's
the
just like
famous
the
picture?
it's just like a cursed photo, I guess you could say.
It's
It's just
something
like a,
else.
but listen, not only all those moves I mentioned, they traded for a top three tight end in the league when healthy, and that went way under the radar.
It
That like
did.
no one talked about.
Well, because we've
I've
seen
been
Darren Waller injured every year for the past what three,
that
four
is
years
yeah,
now.
I get it.
So I
I
think
understand.
people just want to need to see him on the field first. I've heard that Daniel Jones and him have great chemistry
I
already.
I saw yesterday that they were talking about the Giants training camp. I quote, they were like, I have never seen a player like this right now for the New York Giants that's like causing this much disruption and like frustration with this defense. They said
Yeah,
every single time Daniel Jones throws the ball to Darren Waller, he rarely drops it, and he's open by like 5 to 10 yards. They
yeah.
said Darren Waller, he's like in a league of his own in the Giants training camp. It's they said by far he's Daniel Jones' favorite target. That's why
I
I'm
heard they
like,
had to take Darren Waller off the field so Daniel Jones would throw to somebody else. So that's going to be an interesting connection to watch.
that's gonna be
Now the
very
thing is,
interesting.
now what does that speak to, right? I mean, does that speak to Darren Waller's greatness? Does that say that you should be concerned about the Giants in any way, shape, or form?
I
In
don't
terms of
think
the
of
defensive unit, or is Daniel Jones just someone who doesn't want to throw a deep ball and just throws to his tight end? It can be all of those things at once, too.
because also I'm looking at the weapons that they got. Darius Slay, and I think he's a good deep ball guy. I
He's
think
not
he's
bad.
pretty. I think he's all right. Jalen Hyatt, I thought he was really good at
Speedster.
Tennessee. Out of the receivers in the draft, he's not the one I would have preferred, but I'm glad they got one of them. And Jalen Hyatt's my guy now, so now I'm gonna support him. But it's like
Have to.
these guys are young. These guys they drafted Wandale Robinson last year. He barely played, and it's like
Right.
you got a lot of young, unexperienced weapons. Give them time. Give them time. Let them relax. Daniel Jones needs to build trust with them as they need to build trust with Daniel Jones. But Darren Waller, this guy, come on. He's the most experienced guy here. He knows exactly what he's doing before he even got traded. So I think, yes, obviously, I understand the argument that every other team in the NFC East, they all got better, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Giants made it out second in that division. I wouldn't be surprised.
Now, is that? I mean, that's got to be more because the Dallas Cowboys do not fit in. We'll see what
Yeah, I
they
wouldn't be
do.
surprised.
Dak said he doesn't want to. We'll see about that, Mister Prescott. But
Yeah.
I mean, Giants. There's a lot of ways they can go. I don't know where they're going to go. I do see them. I see them making the playoffs again. I'd have to break down the full scape of who's going to get in and schedules and all that. But
Ooh.
I can see the Giants. I mean, they have a good chance of getting in, especially expanded playoff. I can see them getting in as that third wild card again. It just depends. Is Daniel Jones better than last season, or was that the best that Daniel Jones had to offer last season? That's the big question mark. It's not about how good Saquon Barkley is. This defense is getting better. Darren Waller is Darren Waller. Now Daniel Jones has a couple weapons that he's got at his disposal. You know, what sort of criticisms is Daniel Jones going to answer to? Is he going to throw that deep ball more? Is he going to become, less of a runner, more of a pocket passer like we're waiting for him to become? Is he going to become less reliant on that running game? He had 708 yards. Is he a Lamar Jackson type where he's able to use it so well? We don't know. But we'll see what Daniel Jones and the Giants can do with Saquon Barkley actually on the football team, surprisingly enough.